The energy in the arena was already fraying at the edges. A nervous electricity that usually signals something is wrong with the production truck. It wasn't the standard deafening roar of a Friday night. It was a confused murmur that started in the nosebleeds and washed down to ringside. The Titantron flickered once, twice distorting the scheduled graphics into a jagged mess of gray noise. For 3 seconds, the entire broadcast feed cut to black, leaving millions at home staring at their reflections in dark screens. In the arena, the house lights didn't dim, they died completely. This wasn't a calculated blackout for a spooky gimmick. This felt technical, raw, and unpolished. You could hear the sudden scramble of the commentary team, the muffled sound of headsets being adjusted in panic. "We apologize for the technical difficulties," a voice muttered, barely audible over the swelling confusion of 18,000 people. Then, a sound cut through the darkness. It wasn't music. It was the screech of a microphone feedback loop, high-pitched and painful, echoing off the rafters. It sounded like a violation of the show's polish. Security guards at the barricade stopped watching the crowd and turned toward the stage, their hands hovering over their earpieces. The calm shock was setting in. No pyrotechnics, no carefully timed cues. Just a single spotlight snapping on, searching the entrance ramp like a prison searchlight looking for an escapee. The air grew heavy, thick with the realization that the show was no longer running on a schedule. It was running on adrenaline. The script had been discarded in the dark, and whatever was about to step into that light was not listed on the run sheet. When the figure finally stepped into the solitary beam of light, the reaction wasn't a pop. It was a collective gasp that sucked the oxygen out of the room. It was him. But he wasn't wearing gear, and he wasn't playing to the hard camera. He was dressed in street clothes, a hoodie pulled low. Hands taped up as if he had prepared for a fight in a parking lot rather than a televised match. He didn't walk with the swagger of a superstar. He marched with the velocity of a man on a deadline. Michael Cole's voice cracked through the broadcast, abandoning his announcer persona for genuine disbelief. "Wait a minute. Security. Why is he out here? He's not cleared." The words hung in the air, adding a layer of legitimacy to the intrusion. The intruder didn't look at the fans. He didn't acknowledge the signs or the outstretched hands. His eyes were locked on the ring, burning a hole through the ropes. This was the controlled intensity of a man who had nothing left to lose. He bypassed the steel steps entirely, sliding under the bottom rope with a fluidity that betrayed his age. The referee in the ring threw his hands up, shouting instructions that were blatantly ignored. This was the moment the producer in the back usually cuts the feed, but the camera operators were paralyzed, zooming in on the intruder's face. It was a mask of cold fury. You could see the sweat on his brow, the vein pulsing in his neck. He snatched the microphone from the confused ring announcer, the snatch violent enough to cause another spike of feedback. The arena fell deathly silent, a silence so profound you could hear the hum of the overhead rig. He stood in the center of the ring, the logo beneath his boots, feeling less like branding and more like a target. He didn't speak immediately. He just breathed, heavy and ragged, into the microphone. It was a sound that humanized a god, stripping away the glimmer of the entertainment industry to reveal the exhausted man beneath. When he finally spoke, the voice was quiet, almost conversational, which made it terrifying. "They told me to go home," he whispered, the audio gain cranked up so high it caught the tremble in his throat. "They said the story was finished." He paced the ring, looking at the empty turnbuckles. "But you don't get to write the ending." The commentary team had gone completely silent, likely instructed to lay out and let the disaster unfold. He began to dissect the company, not with insults, but with uncomfortable truths about loyalty and disposal. He pointed a taped fist at the executive suite, a gesture that felt less like a theatrical prompt and more like a legal threat. Then came the physical break. A producer in a headset sprinted toward the apron, waving his arms. The intruder didn't hesitate. He dropped the mic, a dull thud that felt like a gavilan lunged. The collision was messy. It wasn't a clean wrestling move. It was a tackle, a scramble of limbs, and desperate shoving. The crowd shrieked, uncertain if they were watching a segment or an assault. The intruder tossed the official aside with a disregard that made the front row flinch. This was the point of no return. The PG era shattered in that scramble. He stood over the fallen official, chest heaving, looking at his own hands as if surprised by his own volatility. SmackDown had officially lost control. Chaos is rarely cinematic in real life. It is ugly and disjointed. That is exactly what the next 60 seconds looked like. Security flooded the ring from all sides, a swarm of yellow shirts trying to bury the fire. But the crowd was now in a frenzy, standing on chairs, throwing cups, chanting a name that hadn't been on the marquee in years. The broadcast director panicked, switched camera angles, cutting from the brawl in the ring to the shocked faces in the crowd, trying to obscure the reality of the situation. It only made it feel more visceral. Social media began to melt down in real time. Twitter trends spiked within seconds, blurring the lines between work and shoot. Was this planned? Was he arrested? The commentary team was audibly standing up, their chairs scraping against the floor. "We need to get to a break," Graves shouted, his voice losing its usual cool detachment. "Cut the feed. Cut it." But the feed stayed live just long enough to see the intruder break free from two guards, screaming something unintelligible at the hard camera, his face twisted in a raw, unpolished emotion that no writer could script. Debris littered the canvas. The timekeeper rang the bell incessantly, a futile attempt to restore order to a scene that had devolved into anarchy. The barrier between the performers and the audience had dissolved. The fans weren't cheering for a move. They were witnessing a collapse. The camera finally found a wide shot, showing the sheer scale of the disruption, security spilling out, officials running down the ramp, and in the center of it all, the lone figure, laughing maniacally as he was finally restrained. It was the laugh of a man who had burned the bridge and was enjoying the warmth of the fire. The screen finally went black, but not to a commercial. It went to the technical difficulties slate, a silent admission of defeat by the network. When the show returned, the arena was dimmer, the crowd noise muted by audio dampening. The ring was empty. The debris had been swept away, but the stain of the moment remained. The announcers sat at their desk, looking genuinely rattled, shuffling papers that were now irrelevant. They didn't recap the event. They didn't show a replay. They just moved on to the next match with hollow enthusiasm, which only served to highlight the magnitude of what had just happened. The refusal to acknowledge the event was the loudest statement of all. It confirmed that we had witnessed something forbidden. As the show limped to its conclusion, the energy never returned. The fans were distracted, checking their phones for leaked footage of what happened during the blackout. The main event wrestler entered the ring, but he looked small, insignificant compared to the ghost that had just haunted the canvas. In the end, the viral moment wasn't about the violence or the shouting. It was about the fragility of the illusion. We watched wrestling to see a controlled simulation of conflict. But for 5 minutes, the control snapped, and we saw the raw, jagged edge of a man's pride. The twist wasn't that he returned. The twist was that he showed us that the machine can break. As the copyright logo appeared in the bottom corner, the lingering question wasn't who will win next week. It was the haunting realization that, for a brief window, the script was blank, and we were watching a man write his own eulogy in real time.